the light! Oh, what you gonna do, huh? Oh, you scared of a little light, huh?
With what feels like quite an abundance of remakes flooding the industry currently, with the likes of Resident Evil 4, Silent Hill 2, and Metal Gear Solid Delta, all remakes of notable landmark titles, a remake of a 2013 indie horror game wasn't exactly on my bingo card.
Did I just say that? That's kind of weird.
Just over 10 years after the original release, developers Blue Owl Studios and Parsec Productions have just released a brand new remastered remake of Slender the Arrival for PC and next-gen consoles, with the PC release being a free update for those who already owned the game on Steam. Now, since I already did a full retrospective on this game back in June, coincidentally when the remake was announced, I'm not going to go in depth on every aspect of the game, like the levels and story. If you want my full thoughts on all that, you can watch that video. This will just be about the remake.
Why are you telling me to run? I'm just holding the torch!
You have
Look
to
at the legs!
look in the direction to run away, Gavin. I can't run away when you're staring at him, fucking asking him out for brunch.
So, for the remake of Slender the Arrival, Blue Owl Studios have moved away from the Unity engine and opted to rebuild the game entirely using the Unreal Engine 5. And I was initially concerned that I would have trouble running the game, as even though I have an RTX 3050 and 16 gigs of RAM, The Last of Us Part 1 looks and runs very poorly on my rig, even though Red Dead Redemption 2 runs just fine, same with the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection.
Well, I don't know. I mean, how would you describe it?
Empty.
To my relief, the game actually runs remarkably well, with almost all the settings on Ultra for my playthrough, and I opted for a resolution of 1440 by 900p for the sake of performance when capturing footage. Right off the bat, the remake looks really stunning, and obviously the best way to showcase the leap in fidelity is to do comparisons with the original Unity engine version. Even in just the opening level, you can see the increase in detail with the scene geometry being a lot more complex, and the roads now make liberal use of Unreal's parallax occlusion mapping, making them look suitably more realistic and worn. There's also a lot more foliage covering the environment, with a richer variety of plants and grasses that fill out the scene a lot more than the original. All of the in-game assets have been completely rebuilt from scratch too, with much higher poly counts and vastly improved texture work throughout. And inside many of the building locations, there are a lot more scenery props littered throughout the space, making the game world feel a lot more lifelike. Kate's house in particular looks notably more decrepit and disheveled, which adds to the creep factor and also reflects her character letting everything fall into a mess. I also like these little moths flying around the lamps. They're kinda cute.
The hell's a thin man?
I don't know. Well, check that out though.
The third level, Into the Abyss, definitely benefits the most from all the graphical updates, as this was always the scariest level in my opinion. There are new assets like these floor grates that have distinct audio sounds that, combined with the rest of the sound design, like the sounds of the chaser's footsteps, really elevates the tension in this level. I would also be remiss to not talk about the fantastic new lighting work present in the remake. While the original did have some nice looking lighting in places, with its take on God rays, and it definitely had its own sense of style, the remake takes everything to a whole new level. The lighting work is now much more natural looking, with bright flares of light filtering through the trees and creating really good looking shadows from trees across the scene. Of course, most of this game does take place at night or in dark areas, and the lighting updates on display in these levels are as equally impressive as the daytime levels. In the 8 pages level, there is an incredibly palpable sense of darkness when you turn your torch off as everything fades to black. That was present in the original, but the way it fades away here in the remake is a really cool effect. The improved lighting engine does actually create some moments that are actually quite pretty, with the way the moonlight pierces through the trees in some spots, and the way the updated fog and mist effects are implemented really lends well to the atmosphere. The bounce lighting from the torch is also a really impressive update. The way the light will reflect and bounce off different surfaces in the interior locations, exemplified best during the chaser level in particular.
I'll man the flashlight.
As far as the core design of the game goes, this is almost a one-to-one remake of the original, outside of the vastly improved visuals, and for the most part, the visual updates don't interfere too much with the gameplay. There was only one level that seemed to have been redesigned a bit, and that was the last level, running through the burning forest up to the radio tower. In the original, you could kind of just pick a direction and run, even straight through the fires. Whereas here in the remake, it has been reworked to be a lot more challenging, with collapsing trees and fire literally roadblocking you, forcing you to double back and find what I assume is the one optimal route up the mountain. I have only a couple minor nitpicks to make with the remake at this point, which very likely could be patched after this video comes out, since there is more content on the way.
No, there's a page in here.
He's in here.
We need to find the page to win the game.
I did play the remake on launch before I had to go away for a convention, and I found that Slender himself didn't look as scary anymore since he was shorter, but that was patched by the time I sat down to play through it properly. One thing that was slightly annoying during the 8 pages level was, due to the increased fidelity in the environments along with the more natural lighting, there are occasions where the pages I was trying to find blended in too well with everything. Not to mention they seem to be smaller in size too compared to the original. I also once again found the Genesis level, which was the remake of the original Slender the 8 pages game, was too brightly lit, to the point that I almost didn't even need to use the torch in order to navigate my way around the landmarks, compared to the original, which is literally pitch black. One thing I noticed during the third level was that the chase's attack animation at this point is far too slow compared to the original, and as such it kinda looks silly as a result.
Ah! No! Get away from me! God, no! You're not getting me! No!
I also thought it was a little weird that the game decides to include reflections and mirrors. It's a stylistic choice that I think doesn't work quite so well when the rest of the visuals look so realistic, and especially when there are screen space reflections and pools of water. It's even more odd considering that every character you play as now has their own distinct shadow silhouette. Just let us see the characters' reflections. It would be cool to finally know what Lauren is meant to look like. Plus, I'm assuming everyone has to have a character model if they're adding a multiplayer DLC in the future, unless that features entirely new characters. Which just leaves the one brand new addition added so far in the remake, that being the extended chapter level Nightmare, which you can find in a new location in the 4th level. It's a surprisingly lengthy level with a couple of cool set pieces, like one down in a flooded basement that feels like a bit of a nod to the infamous water monster level from Amnesia: The Dark Descent. The level does seem to be channeling a pretty strong Silent Hill vibe, particularly with the art direction and location being set in an abandoned hospital. I will say that some of the scares were a little predictable given that it's quite a linear level, using the old classic trick of doors slamming behind you and going back into a room to find something has changed, but there were moments where I was on edge, especially when crawling through the vents. I don't like crawling through vents in games anymore. You ruined that for me, Alien Isolation. Overall though, it's not a bad level, and since there is a big DLC with 3 more chapters still to come, I'm cool with it.
What are we doing?
We're hunting a ghost.
A ghost, exactly. Who does that?
Now, whether or not I would ultimately recommend this remake is an interesting question, since for me, this was just a free update to a game that I've owned for 10 years, and I didn't have to pay the updated price tag. I think if you are already a fan of the game, it's worth checking out the remake, as I do think it's for the fans first and foremost. If you never did play the original, however, it could be a harder sell for you, as whether you find Slender scary now in 2023 is definitely subjective. But I will say that the game's fairly short length does make it a good choice if you're after something short and sweet to play on Halloween, as you can finish it in about 2 hours. Anyway, those are just my general thoughts on the Slender the Arrival remake. It's a visually stunning coat of paint to a fun indie horror from a mostly bygone era of the indie horror scene, that if you happen to have nostalgia for, will lend itself to being a fun, spooky experience. Otherwise, I don't know, play Outlast Whistleblower, I guess. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, let me know your favourite games to play around Halloween, and as always, stay safe out there everyone, don't go exploring old abandoned mine shafts, and I'll see you all next time.
I'm not going in there.